guys, we have the Wallington twins here today at another episode of Get to Know Your City. So before we get into where we are and how amazing this interview process is going to be, we do have to mention a few things about COVID-19.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we've come in here, all the employees have been checked. Everybody that's actually involved in the interview process is nice and healthy. So yeah, it's super important during these times that we do our due diligence and make sure that everybody's safe and ready to go for the interview.
Right.
So we've done that.
Absolutely. So now mentioning where we are at this iconic business, Poco Building Supplies. These guys have hit 100 years this year, so it's going to be a super exciting interview.
Absolutely.
Let's get to it. Let's do it. Chris and Jeff, obviously, thank you very much for meeting us here today.
Thank you.
For taking off the mask right away. Yeah. Everybody's healthy, everybody's being safe.
And we're outside, technically.
Yeah, you might see some of our breath.
Yeah, exactly.
So one of the biggest reasons why, we'll sort of introduce why we wanted to sit down and take an interview with you guys. So as we were sort of just talking about behind the camera, there's a lot of really successful local entrepreneurs and business people, and our entire lives growing up, we've been looking for these successful people, whether it's across the world or wherever it is, but there's people like you guys in our very backyard, and we think that's super important to showcase.
Yeah, that's great. And we appreciate being showcased.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're a little company that's been around here, kicking around for 100 years.
Just 100 years.
Yeah, yeah. Congratulations on that. I actually looked at the stat on that, and less than 1% of the companies lasted for 100 years.
Yeah.
So that's a massive feat.
And I think it's something like less than 4% of companies make it to the fourth generation.
Right.
So that's another big thing for us too, that it's been family owned the entire time.
Yeah.
We have had at various times, my grandfather had a kind of a junior partner for a little while, but it's always remained in the Gamer family, which has been pretty cool. And we're actually older than 100.
Okay.
We actually started trading in 1919, but we incorporated in 1921.
Gotcha.
So we go off our incorporation date.
Right.
Gotcha.
But I've got letters upstairs from my great grandfather hounding customers at the time in 1920, trying to get his money out of people.
Really?
Yeah. So I was going to say, so Harry started coming in 1921, right? But at that time it was the Coquitlam transfer company.
That's right. So originally the biggest part of the business at the time was the movement of goods. So a lot of it was running coal and lumber back and forth between, say, New Westminster being the big dock at the time, or primary port. So that was the bulk of the business was the transfer side of it, and then slowly the stocking or inventorying of goods continued to grow and grow and grow.
Gotcha.
And then the Poco Transfer Company still actually exists. It's the name of our cartage company.
Okay.
But it's a wholly owned subsidiary that belongs to Poco Building Supplies.
Right.
So it still does operate, but Poco Building Supplies has kind of become a bigger brand that we try to.
And I mean, for anyone who's just kind of tuning in, and maybe if they don't know per se Poco Building Supply, would you guys just give us a quick intro of who you guys are and what you guys do here, and maybe a bit of background?
Yeah. Sure.
So I'm Jeff Gaylor. I'm one of the owners here now, fourth generation of Poco Building Supplies. This is my cousin, Chris Gaylor. We've been doing this now for 12 years as president, and technically I am the secretary. But yeah, we've been running the company together for 12 years. And basically we sell construction goods and anything basically to build a house from the ground up.
Right. Okay. Cool.
And we're kind of lucky too that when people ask us about being 100 years old, that the family pyramid hasn't gotten so wide at the base that oftentimes that is the problem. Getting into the second, third, and fourth generation, there become so many family members that if they want to become involved, is very difficult because that number of people don't always fit into a business at the top or in a management kind of role. So for us, we've been lucky. It went from our great grandfather Harry, to his son John. And John did have an older stepbrother that was never involved in the business from Harry's first from his first marriage, and then from there it stepped down to my dad, my uncle, and my aunt.
Wow.
My dad and my uncle maybe had a little bit bigger role in the company, but my aunt's always been involved as well too. So our dads are obviously brothers, and Jeff and I are separated by 8 years.
Okay.
But
Both the oldest of our
Yes.
set
All
brothers.
right. Kind of a bit of a yeah, we are.
And I do have a younger sister who's on a maternity leave that works for us on a full-time basis. She'll be coming back hopefully this summer.
Nice.
On and off. Jeff's had his sisters.
Yeah, I've
involved
got
in
3
the
younger
company.
sisters, and I believe every
Wow,
one of
big
our siblings
family.
has had some
Yeah.
sort of job here. At some
Did you
point.
guys always kind of envision going into the family business, or was that something that randomly came about?
I would say we both started here at an age where that was somewhat, I guess, in your mind that was
yeah.
a goal or a plan of whether ours or our parents.
Yeah.
But both of us have gone and done our own thing.
Right.
In the meantime, I mean,
Yeah.
Chris came back from New York to make this happen. He was working in New York with his wife, and I started my own business doing decorative concrete curbing with a friend of mine.
Okay.
And just tried my hand at something on my own.
Yeah.
And then inevitably we got the opportunity to come back together.
Right.
And when we both kind of saw that, it made that far more enticing than either one of us trying to jump in
Yeah, yeah.
by ourselves. So
Yeah, I think the wheels were probably spinning a little bit in the company going back about 15 years. There had been talk of maybe selling the company. I was living
wow.
abroad. Jeff wasn't involved at the time. And then for us to really make a go of it, it made sense that it was only going to work if the two of us both kind of jumped in together.
Right.
Yeah.
So that opportunity, going back, I guess, about 2008, and we've just kind of taken the ball and run with it from
Right.
there, and it's been a really good transition. We've been lucky that my dad and my uncle both been supportive, but not in a way that they've gotten in.
You're
gotten
too
in our way.
hands-on. You guys kind of
Yeah.
have the freedom.
Kind of really let us get out there and do what we wanted to do and make the changes that we thought were necessary, and that's led to kind of where we are, I think, today.
had we have stumbled out the gates, they might have been a little more hands-on.
Yeah.
But I think we've shown nothing but positive
Right.
results since we took over. And again, we came on with our general manager who had been here for 15 years plus at that point
That must have
already.
been helpful
So
then.
he was definitely a big part in our success. And then we hired our current CFO as well, who has a history in our industry.
Yeah.
And again, just another great backboard for us to sort of help us grow into the position that we're in now.
right.
So,
That's
Right.
fantastic then, and yeah, I was looking at some more of the history as well. I saw that John actually drove a fire truck from Ontario to here. Is that fire truck still around?
It is.
Really?
It is still
the
okay,
city
okay.
of Poco has
Okay,
it, part of the fire.
yeah.
It's actually down, I think, at the number 1 hall, the new hall down on
Oh, okay.
Broadway. So the story was, at the time, my grandfather was a long time, he was the volunteer, the Poco at the time was a volunteer firehouse.
Right.
In fact, my family, my dad and my uncle grew up in the firehouse itself.
Wow.
So he was the longtime chief,
That's amazing.
a volunteer chief.
Cool.
And he drove 2 of them back, I think. So the time, if you wanted a new fire truck, they were in Ontario.
Right.
That was actually, if I remember correctly, he drove it back and took the opportunity as a big baseball fan. He stopped in Detroit, so that thing
Okay.
parked the Poco fire truck in Tiger Stadium's parking lot.
Wow, that's
Went
cool.
to a Tigers game,
Yeah.
and then drove
Might
the
as
rest
well
of
if
the
you have
way.
to make that commitment in
Yeah.
a fire truck.
So there's a photo of us in here kicking around somewhere of him
Right.
dressed up in the 90s. I think that's probably the one you see.
Yeah.
They got the hat on him and the jacket, and he's probably in his early 80s with the same truck that he drove back.
Wow,
in.
that's amazing.
They've got a truck, he drove one back in 47 and then one maybe in like 51, something like that.
Crazy.
But so he was, and we had at the time, there would have been 4 members of the volunteer fire department all worked here at Poco Building Supplies. So when they got a call, they literally left.
There's all the employees, guys.
They left.
I can't imagine that today.
There was a coffee container that they left on the counter that
Yeah.
was like an IOU, or you put your money in for whatever you were taking, or you
Yeah.
wrote down what you had to pick
Wow.
up. They never even closed the doors. It was Sam
Whoa.
Waddell, my grandfather, I think Bob Gillespie, and one other guy, and they'd go off on the call and then come back and the doors would.
Imagine doing that in today's era. Like half the employees work elsewhere. Like
You see the
trust
results
you guys.
every Halloween. You see the results when you put the candy in the bowl.
Yeah,
you see the
that's
long
right.
bowl. That would make the day.
You always have a few kids
Yeah.
that are just like
The first guy might drop money in the bowl. The second guy would take it up.
Yeah. So that's kind of a neat thing. Is that my grandfather always had a lot of civic pride. He was an alderman as well too, as in addition to being a volunteer fire chief, and was always really involved in the community. And And yeah, it was kind of a,
Right.
a neat anecdote that goes with it. Yeah.
On that note, was any of your family members involved also with the city, with running for mayor or anything like that? I was reading a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, Harry was I believe it still has, not that it's a record, but I think he's the longest serving Port Coquitlam mayor.
Right, okay.
Len Travelay was another long serving one, but I think Harry was the mayor for 21 or maybe it was 27. I'd have to go back and look, but into the 20 years of being the mayor. And
So when you stepping up.
yeah, we're in really good hands with Brad Westry.
absolutely.
And the way everyone's scrutinized nowadays, I don't know that any civic run would be in my future down the road. But no, we're really happy with our local council and mayor right now. But and then my grandfather John was an alderman as well too. So they both kind of took that civic responsibility really.
Absolutely, I love that. Yeah.
Cool. So just sort of following the history of the company, in 1967, Timber Mart, you guys were one of the co-founders, right? So if you know some history on that, how did that start?
Not a founder, I guess.
Well, we were one of the first 13 groups independent stores that came together to form a buying group. Essentially, that they could go out and then negotiate with vendors on using their scale of all those companies coming together. So that started off as a very small company or a very small organization with 13 members, and now is over 500 members nationally. Headquarters in Calgary. It's obviously grown. It's taken on some other buying groups that have been incorporated into it. But behind Home Depot and Lowe's and Home Hardware, we're typically about the 4th or 5th biggest buying group in Canada with our volume now. So that helps as independents. It's a great place to be because it allows us where we want to maximize our buying power with those other groups, but we're not beholden to anybody in terms of like specific programs. We can still buy anything at any time. So that's what makes us so like the ability for us to go out with you come in and say, well, I know there's this product and it's through a vendor that maybe we don't have a relationship with. Well, we can go out and either form that relationship or go buy it on your behalf. And it doesn't matter who we're not owned by anybody, but there's no corporate parent speaking down and saying, no, you have to sell this brand of this and this brand of that. So it's allowed us to be really flexible.
I see that. I look at a lot of the bigger organizations, and Richard Branson's a popular guy that talks about this. When he first started Virgin Air, he talks about competing with some of the big guys. And one thing that gave them a huge benefit was that when they wanted to adjust anything, they didn't have to wait for months of approval. They were able to be malleable and just adapt to that change, and everyone else was kind of like waiting. So,
well, and then even in COVID, how helpful that was for us, because on a day-to-day basis, we could go, what we tried to do today didn't work very well. Let's do something entirely different tomorrow. There's nobody else. It's me and him at the end of the day, right? So that allowed us to be really flexible, and we'd heard about, not to knock necessarily Home Depot, but there were these giant lines at some of the big box retailers, and we were turning orders around in like an hour. And you could sit outside in our parking lot, call us, we'd send you the link for payment, and then someone would walk to the door and hand it to you.
Crazy.
And for a small store like ours that isn't really set up for e-tailing just yet, but at least we had the forethought to allow for online payments and that sort of stuff. And just the timing of that, like no one knew that obviously COVID was around the corner, but for us to have rolled that out a year before, so we kind of kinks were already out of it. We weren't on the fly trying to adapt a new payment system. So we were on like running the moment it started, because we shut down for 13 weeks to store traffic. So we were doing curbside and deliveries only.
Really?
And Jeff was outside running a machine every day, running a forklift. And
we were picking on orders on every cart we had.
Really?
It was. But to go back to Timber Mart, one of the benefits again of being part of Timber Mart was during that we're not waiting for head office at Timber Mart to give us instructions like Chris said. But on top of that, they were putting us in a position where we were able to have, basically putting us in touch with every Timber Mart in BC all across Canada and sort of figure out what each of our problems are and problems that we hadn't seen yet, and we were able to get ahead of some of them. We were able to give advice to some of those that were struggling on different areas, and it really put us
able to bounce off ideas.
Absolutely. Like things like trying to get flexi. Like at the start, we didn't know about if we were going to open back up, if we needed barriers, who were the vendors, because that stuff was going up almost on a daily basis. Trying to find it because there was, you know, like the best stuff originally was the, you know, cheapest material, like 3/16 or 1/4 inch plexiglass. All of a sudden that was, everybody used it up.
Right.
And then all of a sudden you're getting quotes on like 5/8 plexi, and it was like 10 times what you talked to a guy about the week before.
Right.
So it's little things like, okay, what are you guys doing for hand sanitizers, and, you know, like where we're getting stuff, and so be able to talk to other owners who are in the similar situation to ours, to be able to, you know, go out and get those resources out of them was really key, because it was, and then the flexibility on top of that of being an independent and not having a corporate overlord that was making those decisions for us was really handy.
So you know, on that topic of COVID, without saying, I guess, examples of, you know, specifics what you guys did about, you know, adapting, she kind of mentioned that. What was your methodology or thinking about, okay, so we've just had this huge event happen, like what was your guys' thinking moving forward? Was that like, let's just be really, really safe, and you know, employees number one, or are we going to adapt, like, you know?
I would say before employees came staff. And protect our own staff at all costs. And we have staff of all ages. We have staff that have health issues. You know, for us, that was first and foremost. But I think more than anything is keeping them working and keeping our customers, giving them the ability to continue working. I would say, I think maybe we shut down for a day or a day and a half or something like that, just to get ourselves set for the new transition into basically what we became for 3 months, which was a, you know, pre-order pickup in the parking lot, and our parking lot was full for 3 months. But yeah, I think more than anything, it was just a matter of making sure that our staff was safe, and that we, you know, without us coming and getting the proper stuff set up, they were going to be able to continue working. And we were able to send some people home and have them do their job almost to full capacity from home. But in some cases, that's nearly impossible for some of our staff, and we didn't want to just pick the ones that we could send home and you'll be working and the rest of you will figure it out later. I mean, we wanted to make sure that we had a job for everybody.
We also didn't know what the designation, until we knew that construction was going to be considered an essential industry at the time. We, like, my fear, and I don't mean to speak for Jeff, but I'm sure it's probably the same thing, was that, like, our big concern was how, like, what's going to happen if we close down. It wasn't a concern for myself or him. Like, the reality is that he and I were going to be okay. Like, we're very fortunate. Whether it's your family or whatever, like, my concern was the staff. It was like, what if, you know, we know that there are probably some people living paycheck to paycheck, maybe some people that, you know, we know their families, we know that they're the chief bread winners in the family. And that was the real concern, was if we shut down, what's going to happen to these people? And let alone all the things that start to back up, like, you know, you lose someone, do they come back? Do they, you know, how long are they gone for? What does our staff look like? We didn't know if this was going to be, we're closed down for 2 weeks, 2 months, we're going to be closed for, you know, longer than that. We didn't know. And I mean, you know, there's obviously a lot to talk about in terms of, like, the financial backing. I just thought the fact that we were so lucky to be in a place where, at the very minimum, the government stepped forward and you know, there was money available right away if people had to stop working. We were really fortunate that we only had 2 people that used the CERB. We actually didn't. There was nobody that was told that essentially they didn't need to work, or maybe I should say one job, simply because of the way we restructured. But everybody else pretty much had the opportunity to work all the way through it, and one person, just because of her childcare concerns, like, which exactly what CERB was for, she couldn't continue to work for us.
What would you guys say, I mean, for other local businesses that might not have had the know-how to adapt, that kind of gave you guys that edge to be, you know, to make this happen?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I don't know that there was any great formula. It was really just a matter of saying, like, you know, how are we going to get through this? What can we do differently? And then just trying to adapt to it. And like I said before, like, that feedback. If something, a customer said, look, like, this isn't working, a 4-hour lead time isn't working, you know, or calling in isn't working, or me showing up, and we were thinking, okay, can we still have the yard open and let people come in and load up? Because allowing people to load up is actually way easier than having your employees have to go up and pick an order for somebody, especially, you know, if it's coming down to, guys like to get out there, put their hands on a 2x4, look at the crown, and, you know, and determine. So when your order shows up for you pre-picked, not everybody was super, I don't like those, you know, those 2 pieces don't look very nice, can you swap them out?
That just backs up everything,
it was way easier if that person could just pull in, but then then we couldn't quite control the flow of people in here, and then you need more people out there controlling the number of people that come in. There were all these different things that played into it. So it was a matter of us trying to find a system that worked for us, that kept everybody safe, and also that, you know, hopefully placated the customers, because that was the big thing, was just making sure that people were still showing up.
Well, the one thing we knew right off the bat, we knew we were still going to have our delivery business. So that was a positive. We could, at very least, we could staff our yard, staff our trucks, and we could get you know, deliveries to site. And where we didn't know was how busy we were going to be with foot traffic coming in and doing pickups and call-ins and computer orders. And we quickly learned that we were going to be far busier than we would have ever expected. And I mean, I think that was our first reality check. We did about 2 or 3 days where we thought we were going to be able to somewhat control the traffic and the orders coming in and out just by word of mouth. And we quickly realized that's next to impossible. We were doing more orders now than we had ever done. And so we had to come up with sort of a separate, sort of an outdoor shipping log that we would have for picking orders, because, you know, you had to have them in a timely fashion, but there's a guy that's already here waiting for his order. There's another guy that's not going to pick it up to the end of the day, so you're trying to qualify these things so you don't have somebody sitting in the parking lot for excess amount of time. But really, it was on the fly, and I will say it's a testament to the staff more so than anything. Everybody was willing to change their position. There wasn't really questions asked. I think everybody understood that we weren't asking you to do anything different because, you know, for any personal gain. It was completely based on, we want to keep you working, we want to keep the business going. And, you know, it's going to involve, including myself, you know, putting my boots on for a few months. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. My background is coming from the yard. I got to work alongside a lot of guys that I don't necessarily get to work with every day. So that was nice. But
that's a big deal.
A little bit.
Except in this case they knew.
But no, it really was. And again, just getting, you know, that's where my ties are, and going back out there with the guys and really get my hands dirty again. It was nice.
Leading from the front.
Well, and for us too, I mean, you had to have some kind of like rules or policies in place in order just to keep workflow going. But the goal was have the rules and then be ready to bend them as necessary, because every situation was unique, and use common sense. Like if something wasn't making sense, the employees all know that, okay, well, generally this is our rule, but in this situation, you know, it makes more sense to do something different.
I think it's so interesting, Jeff, that what you said there. I mean, I see so many business owners or people that over time they move into a role and they kind of almost create this ego where they feel like I shouldn't do that stuff and other people should. And the fact that you jumped in and you were like, no, let's just do it, and you guys were kind of on the ground floor is a huge testament to probably also why this business has been around for so long. And I mean, you had mentioned that the staff kind of all realized what needed to be done, and they were open to kind of switching roles.
Absolutely.
On that note, is there a philosophy that you guys have when it comes to training employees and that culture? For example, I see different business owners and bosses where they like to be really micromanaging because they want everything black and white, right? And then you had mentioned your father kind of was hands off when you transitioned. So is that also the way you guys kind of are with the employees?
Well, I think we're still, honestly, we've had some pretty big management changes in the last 12 months with our general manager leaving, and now we've got a new sales manager and a new store manager. And it was really important for Jeff and I both to let them know that they had a long leash, isn't the right word, but they had you know, like a lot of room to go out there and make changes, and also, you know, to kind of develop their own management style, but also, you know, as long as we were all working in the same direction towards the same goal, that's what was most important. And I think that, you know, in a way, Jeff and I are very hands-on in the sense that, like, we both get here at 6:30 in the morning. When the store opens, we're both on the counter. We're both, you know, like, used to doing, I wouldn't say grunt work, but like we're
but we fill in on other, when people are on holidays, we step in and do other jobs.
So Jeff does shipping, and you know, like, I cover different salesmen at different times. So it's really important for us that we know on the day-to-day what's going on. We get feedback directly from the customers. We're on the counter, and then after a certain period of time, you know, I kind of go up to my office. Jeff does the same. I do all our commodity buying. So, and then I'll, you know, switch over more to do more phone stuff rather than down on the counter. But I think that helps in terms of, like, you know, because your other sales guys are down there and they're watching how you interact with customers,
Yeah,
how you
absolutely.
take care of the details, and if you're setting the right example
Yeah.
down on the counter,
Big time.
then that's a great way for
Yeah.
them to learn.
Yeah.
But at the same time, not being, like you said, overbearing on our managers, and letting
Yeah.
them handle problems, letting
Yeah.
them, they come up oftentimes, and that's the first thing. What are your thoughts on how you want to handle this?
Absolutely.
Not I'm going to tell you what to do. What do you think's appropriate? And that's the
Yeah.
way we often address problems with customers
Yeah.
too. The first thing, if a customer is really upset and has had a problem, the easiest way to resolve it is, how would you like to see this resolved?
Right.
Sometimes they have a very, very realistic, like, I just need this and this. This will settle everything. A credit here, or can you guys do another delivery for me to drop something off? Sometimes it's super reasonable.
Yeah.
And then that guy's happy because he told you what he wanted done.
Yeah,
and it was
absolutely.
reasonable, no problem.
Yeah.
Whereas if I step in and say, okay, well, this is what I'm going to do, and he's not happy with it, then he feels like I'm dictating it to him.
Right,
You know,
yeah,
sometimes he's completely unreasonable. And
Yeah.
I'll explain, I'll be
Yeah.
like, okay, here's why I don't think that's going to work.
Yeah.
What you want back is more than I made on this transaction to begin with.
Right.
There's no way we're doing that.
Yeah.
And there are other times where just, unfortunately, there's going to be differences of opinion, and
Yeah.
maybe that guy's better served
Yeah.
somewhere else.
Mm,
But
yeah.
generally speaking, we both
Yeah.
are used to dealing with problems on a day-to-day
Right.
basis, and
yeah.
those are the kind of things you
Yeah.
can smooth over right away.
And it's great that you sort of know that line as to how far you're gonna let a customer go, because it's so frustrating when I hear somebody say the customer's always right, and it's like, well,
To an extent,
to an
yeah.
extent, like you got to
Yeah.
protect your employees, and
Oh,
it sounds like
absolutely.
you do a great job of that, and that sort of leads into, so you've been around for so long, and there has to be reasons why that is. I know that you're pretty humble, and you may say like, oh, you passed on, but I mean, like, is there anything in particular why you think you've been able to sustain 100 years of growth and still being successful?
Well, I think it part of it is been like, we've not tried to be anything more than what our core values are. They're just, we're here to help this community grow, and in
Right.
the same way the communities help us grow, and we mean that a lot. Like our community involvement is really important to us, but we know how well supported we are by loyal customers that
Yeah.
are coming back, year after year. We've got guys that we deal with now who are second generation customers that were coming in the store in the 1960s.
You know you made it when you have second generation customers.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's cool.
Well, and not only the customers, we have second generation staff. We
Oh,
have,
yeah.
and we've always tried to maintain that we will promote from within, and again, that helps the familiarity when people come in to shop here.
Yeah.
That they see people for 20 years, and it's the
Right.
same faces, and that, all it takes is you having one connection at a store, and we've all been to a store where
sure.
if you have that guy, you'll go to that store over any other store
Regardless
just
of
because
price,
that
yeah.
one
Yeah.
guy. And we have a lot of those one guys, and they're in the yard, they're in the store. We have drivers that specifically just, you can tell that those guys make that customer's day. They show up
Yeah.
on site, you get a
Cool.
phone call. I mean, we're getting more phone calls in the last 5 years with complimentary sort of
Wow.
advice and good feedback, as
Right.
opposed to just hearing the complaints now.
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of forwarded emails and texts we get now just on that guy that came here was spectacular. He went above and beyond, and the same thing with the guys at the counter, just spending
Yeah.
that extra time. And to us, that's not even necessarily training. I mean, I think that's something that guys see other guys doing, and they just follow suit. And because we have so many senior staff, so many people that have been here for so long, I think that's just embedded in those
Right.
those new guys, that they just follow suit.
And on that note, we were kind of talking off camera about kind of reviews, and I thought it was super cool how you had mentioned that instead of looking at, a negative review as something like getting all defensive about, you actually use it as an opportunity, if you want to elaborate.
Yeah, and I was just saying before too, I do respond to pretty much any form. I mean, there are other people who have access to it, but as soon as there's a review left on, say, Google, it pops up in my inbox right away. So it's often, guys been here during the day, or woman's been here during the day, and maybe they got home and they sit down and then they read a review. So maybe it's 9 o'clock at night and it pops up on my email.
Right.
And I generally try and address them right away. And I see every one of those reviews, like if positive or negative, I always try and respond.
Yeah.
It's just, if people are looking at reviews and they see a response from the owner, I think it's really important because
Yeah,
it shows that I'm
Right.
engaging, and I'm not doing it just to show I'm engaging. I'm doing it because I genuinely either really like the praise. I want to make sure that that person knows, the staff member, that they were talking about and glowing terms that that staff member is going to know about it in the morning. And then I do treat the negative reviews as an opportunity. I always try and get them to respond to my response. I give them my phone number, typically here at the store, and my name, so they have a person, so they're not just railing against this company as being, upset about something. Well, call me and let's talk about this, and maybe there's an opportunity for us to correct this.
I feel like other local businesses it's a good lesson to be had.
Chris and I, even before we took over ownership, it was always a nice feeling as a Gaylor that I'm putting my face and my name out there, and like I said, I've always felt a lot better about a problem when I show up there in person than just send somebody else or try to deal with it over the phone. You just show up, and honestly, that goes a long way. And you go from a guy being just angry at you on the phone, he wants everything solved as quick as you can. You show up, you shake his hand, you apologize, you fix it, and that guy becomes a great customer going forward. He sees that you care. He knows that if he has a problem going forward, that he's not going to get lip service, that he's going to get you personally, and I think that goes a long way.
And just, it's the nature of when you're delivering something on a 5-ton truck that might have 40 or 50 items that you're constantly trying to keep in inventory. There are times where, we run out of stuff. Traffic's bad. Something didn't show up on time that has pushed one of our trucks back on delivery. And of course, that guy on the other end has a framing crew of 8 guys or 6 guys or 4 guys that are standing around waiting. We've told them something's going to be there on time. We understand those frustrations. And it's about, if you can manage someone's expectations as best as possible, and that's something we do talk about in terms of you come in and we talk about a delivery. Let's talk through okay, just because I say I'm going to try and be there at 1 o'clock doesn't mean maybe have 10 people standing there at 1 o'clock at the ready that you're paying, we might need some flexibility, and it's up to the staff to communicate those kind of things to people properly. But, the nature of the business is we do run into some headaches right now. You can't control it if the Second Arrows Bridge is jammed up. Or
they're calling you guys to blame you.
Well, and we do, all of our trucks have GPS on them, so if anybody calls at any time, we can say, okay, your truck is about 2 minutes away from your job site. It also allows us to, we can look back. Last week, customer, I got billed for an hour and a half of crane time. Does that seem right? Well, the crane was engaged for an hour and a half. Those little things, that type of technology that we've invested in has made our life so much easier. Because rightfully so, you got billed for maybe the wrong amount, 2 hours. Oh, no, you're right. It was only an hour. That was our mistake. But that sort of thing that has really helped us out, especially managing the trucks. Because you can see exactly where your trucks are all the time.
Super helpful. And sort of just touching base on the technology side of things, we spoke about it a little bit with regards to your social media following, in particular Instagram. So I think we have to touch base on the fact that you guys have quite a large following, and I do think that there's a lot of older businesses that isn't nearly as been around for as long as you guys have been, but they're very against sort of the social media, oh no, it's not about that, and they try to keep it just completely different than the whole social media game. What has your perspective been on social media, and how have you guys grown to such a following?
Well, I think we're both personally as users, I've grown up in my mid-40s, the last 10-15 years it's been one different thing after another until obviously Facebook and Instagram has some legs, Twitter has some legs. Thankfully I'm not on Parlay, so I don't have to worry about that.
Or TikTok.
But I think we realized the importance of being out there. We aren't a huge company with massive marketing dollars, but if you're using your marketing dollars properly on social media, it gets you in front of a lot of people. You have the approach, either the shotgun blast of maybe magazine or print, where a lot of people that's getting delivered to, but how many of those people are interested in what you're trying to offer them? Whereas social media with proper targeting, my ad is landing right in front of that guy that's looking for something that I have. And that was a really an eye-opener when we started doing using Google, especially both for advertising purposes and optimization of our website, which we're constantly updating our website. Not only versions of it, we have a new version coming out down the road. We're trying to always stay one step ahead. As soon as we see the competition creep up, it starts to look like ours. Well, now it's time to step into something else. And that's been a real. I have to say, I pointed at Jake on that one, who really drove us in that direction. Our marketing manager now. My sister does all of our coordination on all of our social media and does a fantastic job of curating it.
Yeah.
And like you said, 15,000 followers is no small task.
Absolutely.
For, you know, for who would think that a building supply store would have 15,000 followers?
Yeah.
But as long as you're not out there trying to sell someone, you know, a widget or you know, a hammer or something on a daily basis,
Right.
if it's an inspiration and like a cool outdoor living space or something that you have in mind, or if you're you know design oriented and you know that every day there's some different content that you're going to be able to look at on that site. I mean, maybe you don't spend very much time, but we're constantly in front of you.
Right.
And that's really the most important thing right now, is remembering, oh yeah, Poco Building Supplies, they have this, they have that, they have this.
Yeah.
And that's what social media has done for us.
Well, and I think it was an industry-wide, you know, somewhat lag there. Is that I think everybody in the building supply industry, including ourselves when we first started, you know, touching base and sort of playing with the idea of social media. Well, we're a building supply company. What is social media going to do for a building supply company? I don't think it resonates necessarily right away that there's other opportunities to it. And that could go to any business. It doesn't have to be building supply. Just because, you know, you don't see yourself as an online presence, there's other ways to sort of tap into that. Like Chris said, we don't go on there and throw a sale item out every day. And I would quickly unfollow most companies if that's all I said. I'll Google or I'll go on your website if I want to look at pricing and chase deals. But we've gone to more of the inspiration side, and Courtney has done a great job at just sort of tapping into people's ideas and really sort of, you know, driving those into the store.
Right. And I think it's great that you said that. That's also the way that we approach marketing. We like to just offer value. You know, even for me, I hate being sold to, even though I'm in the industry.
When I see
if
another
someone
realtor
tries to sell me
or just listed,
it's one of those things where if you're constantly seeing someone just says, you know, buy this, there's a deal, or this and that, like you said, you're gonna unfollow them. I like the people who give me free information, that, you know, value essentially. That's kind of, you know, even in a sense what we're doing now. We're trying to give our audience value, so that in turn they say, oh, I want to use Poco Building Supplies, or I want to use these guys for real estate. Right? They're not going to use us because we're offering a deal. They're going to use us because they like us. Right?
And also too, especially with SEO and SEM, a big thing for us has always been like that, how quick we can respond to people. And it's not necessarily with a response to every single one of their questions, but just letting them know. Like, say you're sitting on your couch and you're interested in some decking or something, and you know, you jump on our quote request page and you send in a quote request, and 5 minutes later you get a response that says, yeah, no problem, we've got that, we'll send you a quote first thing tomorrow morning.
Blown away.
What I'm hoping you're going to do is put your phone down, go back to watching your TV. Yeah, that guy's going to take care of me tomorrow. I don't need to keep scrolling to all the other competitors possibly, and that has been our approach to it. And oftentimes you get the feedback like, oh, I wasn't expecting a response to this at 10 o'clock at night or something. And I don't do that as often as more, and thankfully actually there's someone that's kind of taken over that role. I used to respond to all those, and we got a guy now that's kind of almost 100% dedicated to that, and he's doing a fantastic job with it. But that's what I told him, you don't have to have all the answers to the person, just let them know that you've seen their response or their email, and you respond to them, yeah, we'll get back to you with this. And if that just means you, like I said, put down your phone and you stop looking at our competitors, well then that's giving us a leg up.
Great, absolutely, that's awesome. And then so with regards to the business side of things, another thing that, you know, I'm super interested in is, have you guys ever thought about opening like another location, or what's the future hold for Poco Building Supplies?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I'll let you jump in here too, but part of it is just the logistics of finding, like, we run on 3 acres and we're considered a small building supply store. Most of our competitors are between 6 and 11 acres. So to find that amount of space at a reasonable rate in this market, as realtors you guys can understand, commercial space, difficult to do. So to open up another iteration as we are, I don't know that we need to do that. We can continue to use this as our base for deliveries. We have kicked around the idea of possibly another like small satellite store, more that's hardware focused. But given everything that's happened, I think the natural evolution for us would be to look at maybe whether it's Poco Building Supplies online as an actual retailer, but maybe looking at doing some e-tailing, given how much, you know, with traction we've got on the SEM and the SEO side, that if we could then direct people, you know, to shopping directly online. We kind of do it a little bit now, but because everything can be volume dependent, and you can't just, you know, jump on and I want 30 pieces of decking, and, you know, like, could you do that? Yes. but the disruption really isn't quite there yet. And until somebody comes in and is able to do that, a couple different companies have tried. But it's kind of tough. Like, people like to get their hands on our products. On a big, if you're buying a $10,000 deck package, you likely aren't just going to do it by clicking. Now, we've had people that have bought that amount without ever coming in. But usually it means them getting some samples in their hands and getting an idea of what it is ahead of time. But I do think that, more likely we're going to be in an online space.
The real-time pricing is a hard one. Our pricing changes daily on the commodity side. And again, so when you're talking, I can go on to Home Depot and order a whole, a massive order for my house, but their pricing changes quarterly at best, and they don't go through anywhere near the commodities per individual store that we will do. So they can hold those prices for set amount of time. For us, we'd be updating that website pricing daily, and that's not something that we're completely
it takes a lot of work.
I can imagine,
but it's something that if COVID's been any sort of sign, I mean, this is where the future is going. I don't see us not having masks in stores even after things start to get back to normal. And I see a lot more people. I mean, you see what Amazon's doing and some of these businesses are doing online, and how big their companies have grown in just the last 9 months. I mean, I think anybody would be naive to think that we're not all heading somewhat in that direction. But yeah, for us, I mean, the logistics of it are tough as far as the online stuff. But we're working on it constantly to try to find that balance. And I think, again, we're closer than most at this point on our side of things. But I think people are still looking for that price, click, quantity, add to cart, and move on. And we just haven't got there yet. But
and you need to be really prepared to get into that. You have to, for us to be able to make sure that our inventory was all isolated properly for our online sales. The last thing you want is going through and finding out that, like, we move a lot of inventory here. A lot of these boxes look the same, and you have human error, and our inventory isn't always what our computer says it is. And when you get into e-tail or online retailing, you need to make sure that stuff, you want to hit an order fulfillment rate and do it properly. So we've talked about it, we've looked at this for a couple of years, we just don't think we're ready to dip our toe into it and do it, not do it properly. So if we're going to do it, it's going to be done properly, and I think that's why maybe having a separate entity, separate inventory, rather than trying to do it all out of one brick and mortar might not be the best thing, because we just have so much walk-in traffic that controlling our inventory all the time is a tough thing to do.
Now, kind of switching topic, just about you guys in particular, if Poco Building Supply wasn't here, what are you guys doing? Where could we see you guys? I know you mentioned you guys did some things earlier on.
Well, so I started here when I was 15. I'm 37 now. It
runs in your blood.
Beyond a little bit of travel, and then starting this business with a friend of mine, which really wouldn't be somewhere where I'd be today. I think this industry for me is become somewhat of just what I know, and I can't see myself moving too far away from the industry, but my honest answer is I don't see myself doing anything else. We've invested our time and the majority of my life into this business, and now financially we are even more invested. So for me, I mean, this is a success or nothing, and I don't see anything but success in the future for us. And, I would probably think of something else in this industry that would, even on the E side of things.
Did you always know you were going to be an owner of some sort, or did you?
Well, so when I started my first business there with a friend of mine, we traveled for a year around Australia and Thailand. We had a book that we just threw ideas in every day, and I mean, I was 18 at the time, and we just, in our mind, we knew. Well, first of all, I knew that I had this job. If I came home, I had this. But the reality of it was that we wanted to do something on our own, and we wanted to be our own boss. And so we came up with just a massive group of ideas every day of whether it was a tattoo design we drew, or today we were going to come up with a pressure washing company that at 18 years old, and we get home, we'll be 19. We could do that. The overhead's small, and it's something that we can make our own hours, and we can enjoy ourselves, and we've worked alongside of each other. And we got home, and my friend's father had this curbing done in his house, and he kind of said, "What do you guys think?" I said, "Well, let's look into it," and we went that direction. And again, it's not something I would go back to, but it was just you know, the idea of working for yourself, and you know, I think maybe just showing myself even, and Chris is probably in the same boat, that you know, you do have something beyond just Poco Building Supplies. I mean, I think both of us being here from such a young age, and the expectation that you probably are going to take over, and everybody else's expectations were probably the same. They see, you know, a 3-generation company and the 4th generation's working. What are they working towards? Probably to take it over. And then I think, you know, Chris went to school and found his own path, and I think that was part of it, is we both wanted to maybe venture on our own path and see where it took us. And the reality is when we got the opportunity, I think we both saw that this is a great fit, and you know, to be able to do it together was I think the real the end result was no questions asked, and we were both gonna get together and do so. But short answer, I don't have it where I'm going to be after this. I'm going to be doing Poco Building Supplies for the rest of my career, I hope.
Nice, cool. Chris, what about yourself?
You know, everything's kind of been thrown off a little bit with, like, you know, what I would have said maybe a year ago before COVID and that, and you know, I have a real passion for cooking and food and that sort of thing, and as much as I, you know, maybe thought that would be something that I dream of, but knowing a couple of my friends, you know, who've really struggled as restaurant owners through COVID, that would be a really tough thing now to look at.
We just met with Orange Kitchen and Bar, and that's what we kind of talked about.
But I mean, you know, perfect dream job. Maybe I'd had a fly-in, fly fishing lodge somewhere, guide and cook, you know, something like that. Whether that would be in reality, I think, like what Jeff said, the fact that we were both away for the business, have gone and worked for other people. I worked for a fairly large marketing company.
Aussie?
It was a professional development company that it was called Aussie because it was originally started by a bunch of Australians. And while I worked there, they got bought out by another big company called Editure, and they were an online marketing company that wanted to come in and take over the brick and mortar one. So I went through a big corporate merger, and we moved, and and got to work under some great people that I still have really fantastic relationships with. I still keep in touch with in New York. And it was more just, I think, venturing out and realizing that I could easily go away from the business and go do something on my own. But I do like the idea of kind of, you know, the flexibility Jeff and I have. You know, we don't keep track of each other. We're both flexible in our approach. We both have young kids. We're running into that age where we both need the flexibility to be able to stay home sometimes because of childcare, or take off early because he's coaching hockey, or you know, that sort of thing. And I don't think you get that with a lot of jobs. So as much as the responsibility, you know, weighs heavily on your shoulder, and you know, you take stuff home with you, and the phone never really turns off, and you've got to deal with people not showing up for work, and covering shifts, and all the headaches that come along with being a business owner, is that the upside to that is, you know, don't want to sound like you're complaining, but the upside to that is that's the flexibility. And if you do well, then, you know, you do really well financially as well too. Hopefully pass that along through to your employees, and make sure that everybody, you know, feels that way, and you can be a little more flexible with your time and how you. Sometimes you're less flexible, but there are times where I think he and I have a really good relationship that way, where we don't, you know, where he can text me in the morning and say, I'm going to be an hour late, or I won't be in today, or whatever. And it's no problem, because I might need to do the same thing. And we have that approach too. We have a lot of employees that are our age right now that are all running in the same age you. Like, if a guy calls and says, I don't have my wife can't go to work today because there's been a COVID exposure, or this or that. What are you going to say? I know, I've got kids. We'll just try and work around it. Take some phone calls at home as best you can, and we'll work through it. We try and be flexible, because we live the same life that a lot of other people that work for us do. So
well, and again, that is a testament to the staff, and so many people here that, you know, the longevity of some of these people's tenure here. I mean, that's second to none in most businesses that I see. I don't see people, you know. We were unlucky enough to lose a few guys of 30 plus years earlier this year, but we still have some here that have been here that long. And when you have a business that's 100 years old, you don't get there by not having, you know, your day-to-day operations running fairly smoothly, with or without us.
For sure.
And that has really been, you know, a godsend for us is that we're able to step away, and this place won't miss a beat. After some time, I'm sure it'll start to fall apart, but you know, a day or a week goes by, if we're in a pinch, if he's stuck at home with COVID or whatever, I don't think there's any fear in either one of our minds that if we're not here that anything's going to change.
And really dependable, loyal employees that are really the backbone of this place.
Yeah.
Cool.
That, you know, speaks to some of the questions that we talked about, you know, what do you think of this place long term, or what would you know, the thoughts about Poco Building Supplies be? And I would like to think that it is a great place to work. We got a lot of people that are 35 years.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
You know, with the two guys that just retired, we're both plus 25s.
Wow.
We've got some 40-year guys in right now. And I mean, that's part of the struggle, is that institutional capacity, when it leaves, it's hard to replace.
Right,
But
for sure,
I mean, it's both a good thing and a bad thing. It's good in that people have stayed this long, but then we almost had this one generation of people that were all coming towards the finish line at the same time, and also we're staring down 6 or 7 retirements within probably a 5-year span. We're like, how we get
What are you gonna do?
Well, it's no surprise that with the 6 to 10 retirements that we're going to have in a 3-year span or so, that we've also got about 21 to 7-year-old kids all coming up at that same time, because we do have that next group of core staff.
You guys got like the Poco Building Supplies Academy.
Like everyone's coming up the
I think when we came, there wasn't a single employee that had a kid less than 13 or 14 when Jeff and I were here 12 years ago. And now we have,
it's got to be close to 20.
Wow. I mean, close to 20.
Now you're getting the grandkids from the older staff. I mean, it's
crazy. Cool.
Where I started to really notice it, you know, we order all the giveaway clothing and then the staff clothing and so on, and I started to order kids shirts. And you know, I'd never done that in my life, and I just thought, well, you know,
why not?
I would love to put my kid in a Poco Building Supplies shirt. And the feedback I got from that was great, but as I started to hand them out, I started to realize, oh my God, there's a lot of kids here. Like, you know, and then when we go a little bit farther and we go into our brothers and sisters and the cousins and everything else,
you guys might have to go into the clothing lines.
But yeah, I mean, it really is. It's, you know, that's one of the things I'll tell the new staff that we bring in, that we do have a really good core of young staff now. You know, we've got young kids, and the sad part for us is with COVID that we aren't really, like, I grew up in the lumberyard, and Chris did as well. I mean, I got pictures and even memories from some of our staff that remember me as, you know, a little guy running around here at 5 years old. And I would love that we could do that with our own kids, and I'd love to be able to bring the staff together and have more interaction with our kids and families. But that's really been put on hold with this, and that's unfortunate. And equally with the retirements and stuff, these people have put in so many years of their life to helping our family and our family business, and then they go and we're not able to give them a proper send-off. And that's something I think our parents always prided themselves on, was, you know, at least celebrating your tenure and the time that you've put in and the help that you've, you know.
Yeah, that leads even to like what we're going to do. Like, you know, we kind of had this idea for the 100th anniversary, different things that we were planning on doing. So we have no idea what we're going to be able to do. And I mean, who cares? Like, we can do it next year, whenever we're able to do it. We can't be, but it just been frustrating, because we're thinking, okay, well, what are the events we're going to book weeks off, and, you know, trying to plan a calendar. We have no idea. We don't know what if we're going to be able to get together with more than 50 people for really probably the rest of the year.
I mean, we host a contractor breakfast every year in June, and basically bring caterers in, have all our staff. We have a bunch of suppliers come in, set up tents, and we had to cancel that for the first time since we started doing it last year because of COVID. And again, we want to plan around that this year, but you're talking June, and it just doesn't even seem feasible at this point. And that's, you know, as much as, like Chris says, you can do it another year, it really is. I mean, that's our opportunity to say thank you to our customers.
For sure.
And, you know, we will find other ways to do it, but it does make things difficult to sort of show your appreciation to your staff and to your customer base when, you know, the best thing you can do is pick up the phone or throw a message. I mean, that only goes so far, and I think we're trying to do that, but you know, it's not as successful as showing them in person. So hopefully we can get back to that sooner than later.
Yeah, well, I think, you know, this has been an awesome conversation so far, and it sort of leads to our last question that we ask all business owners at the end of the interview. And so the question is, if for some unforeseen reason Poco Building Supplies close down indefinitely, what do you want customers, or everybody for that matter, to remember Poco Building Supplies for? And I'll start with you, Chris.
Well, I think I touched on it a little bit. I think it'd be like to be remembered as a place that was a good place to work at. You know, that we valued people. We provide to them and they provide to us, and in the same way that I think that is our relationship with our customers, that we're just as important to them as they are to us. They use us as a day in, day out resource. And I think that people always thought of us as, you know, we're never going to be competing on the big box stores on a day in, day out basis on every item.
Yeah.
Our goal was to be fair and service you like crazy, and that was always our goal, that it was a friendly place to walk into. Everybody felt comfortable coming into the store, and you know, that we were community minded, and that we were all about, you know, customer service and fairness.
Honesty. Yeah, I mean, I think in this industry we've heard, you know, many stories over the years of ways to cut corners and cheat. And I think nowhere along the 4 generations has anybody stepped out of that line and decided that we were going to try to take a shortcut to success. And for me, I would like this to be remembered as, I guess, family would be the word that I think of, not necessarily Gaylor, you know, the Gaylor family, but just family altogether. And I've watched father-sons come and go, brothers and sisters, and I've watched customers and multi-generations of customers come through here, and guys tell me that they remember my grandfather, and you know, to me there's a level of, you know, family and community just amongst our staff, and then you include the customers in that. We have so many customers. You know, Chris and I were at the counter this morning, and you almost, to a fault, we're standing there talking to somebody because we've shared years of business with them, and I've failed to realize there's another customer, and I'm kind of like, can I get you out of here? I need to get him going. But I think a lot of our customers come in here and treat this as an extension of their family or of their business. At Poco Building Supplies, they're going to come here 3 to 4 times a week, and that's expected. That, you know, that's just part of my week, and the people I'm going to see, it's just ties us all in. And you know, you are who you surround yourself with, and I think we've surrounded ourselves with some pretty good people, and not necessarily just employees, but just good people, people that, you know, you're happy to sit down for half an hour and you'll lose track of time because you just talk, and we have a lot of those. I mean, we're guilty of it amongst our own staff, and I'll tell, you know, my staff, I'm not going to give anybody trouble for not working because you're talking to each other. I get it, and that's how we've become who we are today, is by allowing us to interact with each other and interact with the customers. I encourage all of our staff, you know, if a customer wants to waste 15 minutes talking to you, it's not a waste. You're not working. That's as, you know, you're accomplishing as much and making him feel good for 15 minutes as you would be stacking lumber or building an order. You know,
it's a good way to look
the
at
relationships, you know, are what keep this company going, and that can be relationships throughout or with our customers. And I really, you know, I feel like I've made some great friendships, lifelong friendships with customers, with staff, vendors. And I think, you know, that was made easy for us by the longevity prior to us even stepping in here. I think, you know, you've proven that you're a reputable business. You know, when we got in at 88 years, and that part, that's just going to continue to carry on. I mean, I don't think anybody's going to assume that you know, what we've done to get us here is going to change now. But I do really feel like it's a family environment. I love still coming to work every day. You know, Chris and I are totally opposite ends of the spectrum. He lives in Vancouver rather than Pitt Meadows, but I think that keeps us from, you know, being at each other a little too much, because we don't see each other so much outside of work, and that allows us to really enjoy the time we get to spend together here. And I really do. I hope we're remembered as the Gaylors being a good family, but Poco Building Supplies just being a good family environment, and I hope it stays that way.
Awesome.
Okay, guys. Well, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you guys.
It was an honor chatting with you guys.
It was great.
You know, I'm sure a lot of people
Appreciate
got some good insight and kind of how to run the
fantastic.
section. So.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, take care.
Take care, guys.